Hey there fellow creators, Ben here from Cinder Studios, and this week we are taking a look at two eco-friendly acrylic paints. Natural Earth Acrylics and Liquitex Bio-Based. Stick around. So it seems like the current trend in art materials is to lean closer to something more eco-friendly, bio-based, sustainable, all of those buzzwords and everything like that. But you might be wondering, how exactly do you do that with acrylic paint, which is plastic? Now, the first of these companies to kind of pull this off was this brand called Natural Earth Paint, and their product Natural Acrylic Paint with a K rather than a C for some weird reason. This was started by an artist around like 2009, so they're kind of a new kid on the block, but this stuff is 100% plant-based plastic acrylic, so cool thing. Somewhat recently, Liquitex introduced their version, the Bio-Acrylics. Despite the name, they're not 100% plant-based, but they're sort of a nice blend between the old and the new. Now, because I'm treating this like a big double review, we're going to look at a few things for both of these paints. First, just general information, on the tubes and about the companies, that kind of stuff. Secondly, I'll be taking you through sort of my working notes and process. I did a color wheel for both of these, as well as a small painting for both of these to give you guys a visual understanding of my thoughts behind all of this stuff. Then, of course, at the end, I'm going to talk about big list of pros and cons for both of them. The Natural Earth Paint Company was started around 2009 by a professional artist who just needed to find something that was more eco-friendly and safe to use around her kids. The company these days is independently owned and operated, specifically woman-owned and operated. And they really focus on a lot of things like sustainability in terms of the plant being solar powered. They use sustainable packaging mostly. And they really make a point to be as eco-friendly and sustainable as humanly possible. Now, these paints are marketed as artist-grade acrylics. I'm here to tell you that they don't feel that way in any capacity, but we'll get into that a little bit more later. Now, when it came to working with this paint, again, these are listed as sort of professional, high-quality paints, artist-grade paints. The website and the tubes themselves list them as heavy body. They are not heavy body paints, despite coming in tubes. They're actually much closer to like a medium, or I would say even especially so, a soft body acrylic. So I don't know where they're getting heavy body from, because they're just not that thick. Additionally, the tint strength of these paints, definitely not artist grade, definitely feels more student grade in that sense. It's not bad by any capacity. I've definitely used worse tinting paints, but I wouldn't put them on par with an artist grade paint. I was also surprised to find out that the natural acrylic also dries way faster than regular acrylic paint. Even on the palette, the blobs of paint I had laid out were starting to tack up way faster than anything else I've ever used. Short of maybe casein, but that's a completely different material. Also interesting about this paint is that it dries, at least most of the colors tend to dry mostly sort of to a matte finish, which, regular acrylic paint's going to vary a little bit depending on pigment, and this does as well, but even the blue that I was using, which is a phthalo, it seemed to be a lot more matte than I was expecting. And strangely enough, these paints do color shift a little bit, but rather than being kind of darker as they dry, I actually found them to be brighter and lighter, which is odd, especially for acrylic. The one thing I noticed the most, though, especially when I started doing some thinner layers, is that this paint doesn't mix with water super well. And that's sort of like the base core of using Acrylics 101, is you thin them out with water and do some basic glazing. This stuff kind of beat it up a little bit, and I wouldn't say separated, but it definitely didn't mix with the water the way I would expect any other acrylic to mix with. Overall, they're not necessarily bad paints, but I definitely wouldn't call them artist grade, and I definitely wouldn't call them heavy body. They feel probably kind of on par to a Liquitex Basics. So for that reason, it's well, I don't know how they're calling it artist grade paint. It's just not there. Now, Liquitex's entry into the bio-based acrylic landscape, so to speak, is very new. These have only been on the market for, I think, maybe about a year or so. And despite the name bio-based heavy acrylic, in the fine print, it tells you that it's an average of 50% bio-based. So not 100% plant-based or anything like that. And actually, they vary a little bit between the jars themselves. This one is 43. This one is 52%, this one is 41%, and the white is 56. So it seems to vary between 40 and 60% a little bit. Other than that though, I'd say these paints feel pretty much right on par with any other acrylics. Now, similar to the natural earth paint, they're listed as heavy body, they're not heavy body, but it's this one, rather than leaning way softer, I would say it kind of somewhere sits between like a medium and a soft body. It's not quite thick enough for me to call it medium, and it's not quite thin enough to call it a soft body, but it sure as hell is not a heavy body paint. And it says right on it, heavy acrylic. It's not. Working with them, I did find that the pigment load for these was pretty excellent, definitely a lot better than the natural earth paint. As I just mentioned, they're like functionally indistinguishable from a regular acrylic paint. Honestly, if you took the labels off and didn't tell me these were bio-based, I probably would not be able to tell you. Much like the natural earth paint, these also dry relatively matte. I would say more so, especially for the blue. You know, my simple basic, you know, phthalo blue green shade. It's definitely a lot more matte than I'm used to out of a standard phthalo blue. Interestingly, when I was doing some dry time tests, I did find that extra thick applications of this paint did take a little bit longer to dry. Like, it was on par, basically the same for super thin applications and even sort of, you know, medium thickness. I did this drawdown test here. When it got to the super thick stuff up top though, that's when I noticed about 3 hours into dry time, where regular heavy body of paint had skinned over, the Liquitex Bio-Acrylics were still a little bit tacky on that sense. Now that did change, just, you know, let it sit for a couple days, it did skin over as well, but it was a noticeable difference between the two. Comparing the two, I'd say the Bio-Acrylics from Liquitex are definitely much better formulated by comparison. I mean, obviously Liquitex has a lot more money and researchers and everything behind a paint like this, and it's an important step forward, even though it's not 100% plant-based. Now, there is one property that is the same for both of these paints, which I actually kind of found out by accident, and I'm very glad that I did, because between the two of these, the fact that they both have this problem tells me that there is something to this of the bio-based, of the plant-based medium that these paints are made with that does the exact same thing. And that is that they're not waterproof when they dry. Now, it's not terrible, but you can get the paint off. So I will show you this in real time on camera. Paper towel, which I'm just going to wet a little bit with water and wring out the excess. Here's the color wheel from the natural earth paint. I have to do this with my samplers because I have since clear coated my smaller paintings, and clear coating does fix this. So just the red and a little paper towel here. Just gonna rub little circles, not really pushing hard. And that is pink now. You know, if I, you know, give it a little bit heavier of a scrub, all that starts to come off. Now, again, it's not a ton, it's not very red at this point. And then when I discovered that with the natural earth paint, I'm like, does it happen with the bio-acrylics too? So here's that thick sampler card. Just gonna, same thing, just rub on that a little bit. And it's definitely not as bad, but there is some blue there now too. So both of these seem to have an issue with the paint being able to lift off. And honestly, I think that's a pretty big issue. So that's just sort of the general working properties, but let's really dive into the pros and cons here. Like, what can I definitively say for both of these? Let's start with the natural earth acrylic. The natural earth acrylics are definitely a great sustainable push for the eco-friendly artist. Across their both advertised artist grade paint as well as their more kid-friendly products, all of them are sort of live in that non-toxic, safe to use around children kind of way. So if you're worried about your paints, especially if you've got a family, these are definitely a good option for you. They're very accessible paints to work with, fairly easy to use compared to, you know, other acrylics, and honestly, I'd say they're a great practice medium. Plus, the company also sells their dried pigments, which that alone kind of excites me. So even if you don't like their formulation, you can just buy the pigment and make your own paint. On the downside to the natural earth paint though, okay, yikes here. First up, this is 100% false advertising. Not saying that, oh, it's not plant-based. No, it probably definitely is. But there's other claims here that definitely are not true. It's not heavy body, it's not artist quality, it's not archival, which is listed on the back of every one of these tubes, and if I'm able to lift it off of the page with a wet paper towel, definitely not archival. I don't know where they got that from. And they also say they behave 100% like regular acrylics. They don't. These are something kind of different now. Additionally, you are looking at some, for not all the colors, but a lot of them, improper color names. Again, this is advertised to artists as a fine art medium, and you're using scarlet red, brilliant yellow, and royal blue. None of those colors are artist colors. Those are designer colors, as I say. I run into this problem with spray paint companies a lot. They do this crap all the time. It's like, I want the name on the front of the tube to match the pigment on the back of the tube. And since we're talking about tubes and color names and all that, I would expect, especially a small business like this, to, at the very least, do like hand-painted color swatches instead of just printing them. I have that problem with Liquitex too. They've always done printed labels. It drives me completely insane. The one thing I've noticed too is there's inconsistencies on the tubes themselves too. There's like spelling mistakes, and the descriptions don't match. Like maybe it's an older tube or a newer one. I don't know. The blue in particular really caught my attention. So this is listed as royal blue. It is technically phthalo blue, which is PB15-3, but both on the tube and on their website, it says PB153. There is no PB153. There's a colon in the middle there that they have missed, and that alone is like, come on. You got to do your homework with this stuff. As I mentioned before, they're not waterproof, and we kind of got into that a minute ago. And the last thing that really bothers me about these is there's not a lot of colors available. There's only 20 available of the heavy body acrylic, which is, like, they're not bad colors, but like for a company that's been around for 10 years, I would expect a little bit more than 10 colors, or 20 colors. All right, let's try to give Liquitex a fair shake on this one. To Liquitex's credit, again, these are, while not 100% bio-based, they are functionally indistinguishable from a pretty standard acrylic paint. Unlike Natural Earth, there are a few more colors. You can get 40 different color variants in this range compared to the 20, so that is definitely something I like to see. This is an important step forward, similar to the Natural Earth paint, but it doesn't sacrifice quality and professionalism for that eco-friendly, sustainable model. And interestingly, despite the matte finish, I did notice that these have a much richer and better depth of color, especially when, you know, the painting's all finished and everything like that. I used basically the same colors for both pieces, and this one, the Liquitex one, definitely had a much richer feel to that paint. Now, this isn't to say Liquitex is 100% better. They definitely have their drawbacks as well. Again, they're not 100% bio-based, despite all of the packaging and everything like that. It does list it in the fine print, but you kind of have to look for that. Just like the Natural Earth paint, they're listed as heavy body. They are not heavy body. Additionally, those thick applications taking a little bit longer to dry can throw a bit of a wrench in certain painters' workflows, mine especially. And just like the Natural Earth paint, though not as extreme, they're not 100% waterproof. So to wrap things up, both of these paints are an important step forward in a push to bring more sustainable practices and eco-friendly options to artists. While the Natural Earth paint definitely has a great mission and sort of a great philosophy behind what they do, I personally feel that they severely sacrifice quality for pushing that model. And while for some people that might not be as big of a deal breaker as it is for me, personally for me, I'm looking for that quality, and that paint just doesn't quite hit the mark for me. And while the Liquitex paint is not 100% bio-based, this stuff wins by a country mile. It's doing it in a way that doesn't sacrifice quality, and that I appreciate. But the real question is here, does it get my seal of approval? Do either of them, really? Honestly, no. I don't feel confident recommending either of these products unless you are very, very, very specifically earth conscious, in which case go ahead and get the Natural Earth paint. But similar to the Liquitex recycled canvas video, I would say that both of these are an important step forward, but we're just not there yet. And as a pretty dedicated acrylic painter who very much appreciates quality in the materials and the paints that I use, I can't really recommend either of them. Liquitex between the two, but yeah, these are weird paints. But I'm curious the thoughts that you guys have on this. I do know at least 2 people over the years have recommended me to try the natural earth paint, and now I have. It's definitely not for me, but it works. I'm probably going to be using it as like base coat layers and stuff like that going forward. You know, practice medium maybe when I'm out of the house. Although considering how fast it dries, plein air might not be the best use for those. But if you guys have used either of these paints, and what do you think about them? As always, there is a chance maybe I missed the mark here. Maybe my working practice just doesn't fit either of the 2 paints. Or maybe I just missed something entirely. I don't like to completely bash on companies in any capacity, but I don't know, it's just not doing it for me. But like all art materials, it comes down to an individual's preference and what their needs are. These don't really fit my needs, but if they fit yours, awesome. As always though, if you enjoyed this, learned something, or just love hearing me talk about art supplies, go ahead and hit the like button. Let me know your thoughts and comments below. Check me out in the socials in the description box below. And this has been reminding you to keep on creating, stay inspired, and I will see you guys next time. Surprising, because I had only heard of them thanks to... Oh, my head's cut off.